So the chancellor's in all of them.
Has John met him also?
Well, he did. He met the third one last night. Oh, good.
Good morning.
Good morning. Dr. Reddick, good morning. Thank you for being with us. Didn't know if you were going to bring your own water, so we left you one just in case.
Thank you,
Well
appreciate
done.
it.
Thank you. I'm Tom Griscom. I am the chair of the committee and also on the Board of Regents. What I want to do real quick is starting to my left with Quentin. We're going to quickly go around the table so you know who is here, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do for the next hour and 15 minutes, and we'll get started. So Quentin, would you quickly tell them your name and just who you are?
All right. I'm Quentin Murray. I'm student representative. I'm part of the Student Senate here, Student Senate President.
Good morning, I'm Alan Excuse me, I'm Alan Gentry. I'm chair of the Technology Department.
I'm Kimberly Wills. I'm the front desk manager in Enrollment Services and the Staff Senate President.
I'm Jerry Richt. I'm the alumni representative.
Warren Nichols, Vice Chairman, Chancellor for the Tennessee's Community Colleges.
John Morgan, Chancellor of the Board of Regents.
Howard Roddy, member of the Tennessee Board of Regents.
And I'm Gary Farlow. I'm president of the Cleveland Bradley Chamber of Commerce. I'm the business community representative.
I'm Coleman Foss. I'm the president of the local foundation for the community college as well as president of the local hospital.
Michael Stokes, I'm Vice President for Student Services and Administrative Representative.
Matthew Tolbert, Associate Professor of Psychology and Faculty Senate President.
Nancy Thomas, I'm teaching nursing department. I'm a faculty representative.
Karen Wyrick, Math Department Chair, Faculty Rep.
Patty Weaver, Director of Offsite Campuses.
So, Dr. Reddick, we will have a series of questions. What we would like to do is to leave enough time at the end for you to ask us questions. So, time being everything, hopefully we'll ask questions quickly and that you will give us your answers, so we do have some time left. As I said, we'll be in here for an hour and 15 minutes. And if you're ready, I'm going to ask you the first one. We've all seen your resume, as you know, and looked at it. And again, we're glad that you're here with us today. Can you highlight for us, say, 2 or 3 things in your background that you think we really ought to know and that are important to you and would be important here to Cleveland State?
Just 2 or 3?
Yes, sir.
I would say first, thank you for being here. I know this is a lot of work for you all, and I'm delighted to be a finalist, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I would say first and probably foremost in my background, my work at Smyrna, the Smyrna site for Motlow State College was extremely important. We started that campus back in the 90s. Riverdale High School moved into the National Guard and finally obtained a building at some point after I left. And so I think the work that we did there was instrumental for that institution. I think since I have been at Abraham Baldwin in Georgia, we've taken on a number of initiatives there, which I think has advanced the institution on multiple fronts. One of those would be our foundation, not our regular foundation, but our grants foundation, which we call the ABAC Advancement Foundation. And in the past 6 years, we've amassed about $20 million in grants from various sources, which I think has been a tremendous asset for the institution and really sets the stage for the institution many years to come. I also think that our, not just our reaffirmation with SACS, but our work with SACS on advancing the institution to a level 2 institution and adding some baccalaureate degree programs was a tremendous amount of work. But, you know, it's like everything else. It certainly wasn't all my doing. You know, there's a lot of people that work together to get the job done.
Thank you. Alan?
First, excuse me. First question, why are you interested in Cleveland State presidency and why do you feel you might be the best candidate?
Well, that's a good and fair question, certainly. I have been interested in coming back to Tennessee for a variety of reasons. I spent 13 years at Motlow. I had the best time of my life at Motlow. I thought we had a wonderful institution, and it was great to be a part of the TBR system. Made some good friends and did a lot of good work, I think, at Motlow. We've done that in Georgia too, but we're ready to move to the next level. I think our family and certainly myself, and I would love the opportunity to be a president. I think, when I started teaching full-time in 1994, there's I don't want to use the word box or the terminology box, but I do think there is certainly a framework that you have from which you view the world. And each time you advance yourself in careers or in knowledge, then you see the world differently. And I've been doing academic student affairs for 7 years, and I feel like I could do more. And certainly this was a wonderful opportunity for me to be able to apply and entertain the idea of returning to Tennessee. Why do I think I'm the best candidate for the job? I think I've looked at all of the candidates as well, as you might imagine. And I think each candidate is very unique and offers different kinds of experience, but I think the depth of my experience probably outweighs theirs, certainly from an academic student affairs perspective. And I think I bring a lot to the table. Love Cleveland. It's beautiful. All of Tennessee is beautiful, of course, but Cleveland is particularly beautiful.
Dr. Reddick, and follow up. Regardless of the outcome of this current process, what do you see yourself doing 10 years from now?
10 years from now would put me about 58, 59. And so I would probably be a lot like Dr. Height at that point. I would be looking to see, I certainly wouldn't be looking to move to Gainesville, Florida, but I would be looking to retire and probably stay in Tennessee. I would see myself continuing to write, which is kind of a hobby of mine, and I would probably still be active in the community and church and whatever else I was involved in at the time. I don't think anyone really ever retires. I wouldn't even mind teaching part-time when I retire, just for fun.
Could you tell us a little bit about the staff who have reported to you in your current or your last position, how you were organized, and how did you work together?
Sure. In my current position, there's about 20 direct reports to me, both in academic and student affairs, but the way our organization is structured, I work very closely with other people outside of my area. For example, the foundation, I work very closely with Betty McCorvey, who's our grants person, almost on a daily basis. Last night she sent me an email with 10 new grants to look at, so I was trying to read those last night and respond to her this morning. But anywhere from my administrative assistant to my direct reports currently, we work together to get things done. I don't like to have meetings just to meet. Some people like to have regular meetings. I don't have regular meetings. I think as things come up, you deal with those things, and you plan and you let people do their jobs. You want to offer people the freedom and flexibility to be creative and get things accomplished, and that's how I work with those folks at my current institution. I think you would, if you quizzed people at Motlow, you would find that I was very much the same there as well. No one style is the best style. I don't believe that either. I think that each person has a unique style, and you have to find that style, and if it works, then you go with that style.
Quentin?
Dr. Reddick, could you given your experiences, what would you consider to be the essential components of a strong and effective community college administrative team?
Well, I think a number of things. I think you first and foremost have to have good people who are competent, and I think people who are dedicated to the mission of the institution. I think, though, for an institution to be truly effective, I mean, particularly when you have, state support and funding and tuition revenue, I think that's one thing that helps spin the institution along. But it seems to me that institutions have to find their own niche in order to be successful from a recruiting standpoint, from a programmatic standpoint, from a growth standpoint. And I think that's important. But that core team has to be a competent team with credentials who can lead the institution forward.
Probably not at Cleveland State, but in most organizations, there are poor performers. How do you deal with the person who just isn't getting the job done?
Well, we have a very interesting performance improvement evaluation process at our current institution. And, unfortunately, there are times when you have to make hard personnel decisions based on poor performance or other things that come up, and you get those done as delicately as possible. I think one of the issues, is that, faculty and staff often don't know all of the backstory to those kinds of situations, and you can't really discuss those from a legal perspective. But, I think that's where good leadership comes into play, because if people truly trust leadership and respect the leadership, then they would respect and trust the decisions that are made by the leadership with respect to personnel issues. But certainly you deal with those swiftly as they come up, whether it's an incident or poor performance, and move people forward. I think oftentimes, though, when it's not really a critical performance issue, there are ways where you can mentor people to get them moving in the right direction. At our institution currently, we have with our part-time faculty, for example, we have a mentor program that we put in place so that those part-time faculty who know very little about our institution except, what they see in the media, are paired up with a senior faculty member. Our new faculty member are paired up with a senior faculty member who offer them guidance and so forth and how things operate. And I think from a faculty perspective, that really does help. From a staff perspective, we do very much the same thing. We have senior staff who obviously are good leaders in their positions and help bring those other newer faculty up to speed. But at the same time, when there are issues, they can also step in and be of great assistance.
Patty, do you have a follow you want to ask on this question?
I think he's covered.
Okay, thank you. Nancy?
Could you please tell us what we might expect from you during and after your first 90 days in the presidency?
Wow. I expected that question, actually. But I didn't create an answer in my sleep last night when I was thinking about questions. I do believe that, the first 90 days of a position is getting oriented, to everyone and everything and how things work and operate. And it's very interesting. Cleveland State is structured differently than Motlow State was, and certainly differently than the institution where I currently am. I think part of that's learning the institution. I think part of that's becoming active and learning where the president would need to fit in the community, in the Cleveland community, with respect to the chamber or what boards or whatever the case may be. Getting to know people, I think, is critically important those first 90 days. I expect that I would be a lot of getting around and meeting people and seeing how things work. And I would be forming relationships to get things done. I think, and this may be another question that's on your agenda, but I do think that part of the president's agenda for the first 90 days is really to establish a path forward. And I think you're due for a strategic plan. I think that you're due for some facilities planning and some other things like that. So I would probably move quickly to start getting things done in that realm too.
Dr. Reddick, let me do a follow on this one.
Sure.
How do you go about setting priorities for this institution? what would be what's the approach that you use to say, these are things we ought to be doing now, and maybe these are some things that are a good 18 months to 2 years down the road?
Sure. You know, as I toured campus yesterday, you get an opportunity to look at a place from a totally new outsider kind of way of seeing, and you know, you immediately notice things that you would do differently from a facilities perspective. And so I would probably begin to deal with those things that are small, but really they may not be small to an outsider looking at the institution, you know, and as you try to integrate community into an institution even more than maybe it currently is, I think those things are important. It's just like my pretty blue tie that I wore today because it's Cleveland State's colors. You know, that's not really that big of a deal, but it makes a little bit of a difference. And I think then there are long-term projects that need to be dealt with and put in place immediately, and I think you've got a good team to do that here. But I was with Patty yesterday over in Athens, and that seems to be a critical need for facilities in that community, and some alliances and partnerships to move that institution forward in that community simply because of the growth that they've experienced in the past few years. So I think there are small projects that need to be dealt with, but at the same time, you know, creating a facility is a long process, you know, as I experienced in Smyrna. It takes a long time to get those kinds of things done, but I think you create alliances and partnerships and you build that ground support that will help move that and advance that project forward for the institution. Thank you.
Dr. Reddick, Cleveland State Community College, like other universities or community colleges, has many constituencies with whom it must communicate effectively. Given that there are perhaps different need-to-know aspects for different stakeholder groups, how would you go about assuring common understanding of Cleveland State's current issues and prospects for the future?
Well, that's a wide-open kind of question, isn't it? You know, no matter the group that you're dealing with, and we do that in my current position, there's a kind of a high-level public relations perspective. There's an image that you want to present to the community and to all stakeholders, no matter who those stakeholders are, what groups those are. And then I think from there, you then drill down, and when you're out in the community and speaking to different groups, you address different needs, you address different issues, depending on that particular group. I think you have to have different messages. I think you have to address it differently depending on the situation. It's very situational.
Thank you.
Having been in Tennessee before, you understand that the ultimate responsibility for policy rests with the Board of Regents. Could you describe for us what you believe are the characteristics of an appropriate relationship between the president and the board?
Sure. You know, in Georgia, certainly I worked more in Georgia with the system staff than I did when I was at Motlow as dean or director. But I think even at Motlow, we had excellent relationships with the board. I worked for 3 presidents. Each of them was very unique and different in their styles. Frank Glass, Art Walker, and Mary Lou Apple. And each of them, I think, had a positive relationship with the board and with the system staff. That, you know, kind of came back to the institution, and it was you know, the president sets the tone, and so there was a positive relationship, at least from staff, faculty and staff, toward the board. Many of them went to the board at some point, and certainly I did too as part of RODP and other things. But in my current position as vice president, we have I probably work more closely with the system staff and also with regents. We don't at ABAC have a regent in our particular area. We have had in the past. So our regents are kind of spread out more in the state, and our president works primarily with the regents on different initiatives more than we do. But I would say we work with the system staff a lot more, but it's a very positive working relationship. And a lot of that is policy related. At least in the Georgia system, the policy is sometimes very nebulous because what the policy allows for is for room for the institution to refine and make that more specific to the institution. What happens at our college, for example, is not the same kind of thing that would happen at the University of Georgia. So we each create different policies, but those are all linked back to the board policy. We actually, in the past couple of years, you'll note I said we revised all of our policies and handbooks and so forth. There was multi reasons for doing that. One, it hadn't been done in forever, and it needed to be done. But one thing that we did when we did it was we took the board policy, which is fairly comprehensive, but as I said, very high level kinds of things in the board policy, and we loaded those into our system so that you could hyperlink to the policies and intermingled our policies with board policy so that you could see a fine distinction on what the policy was, whether it was an HR policy or whatever, for the board, and then it was refined at the institution level to be a little bit more specific, at least where the board had given us freedom to elaborate on that particular policy. I think that's been very helpful for us. We're actually going through it again to make sure that we've covered all of the things there. Policies come out constantly because of situations that occur. And I'm sure that's the case with you guys. I mean, there are constantly something coming around because of some legal situation that is occurring in another state. So you have to really be on top of policies. It's not the best thing and the most fun. It's good to put you to sleep at night if you have trouble sleeping, but they are very important.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, sure.
When we were talking about constituencies, Cleveland is very much a manufacturing community in a lot of ways. About almost 20 to 23% of our workforce is engaged in manufacturing. Cleveland State does a really good job with their transfer programs. How do you see the relationship of the college with those constituencies and balancing the technical training with the transfer programs?
I think it's extremely important. And I will say this about any two-year college. I think that, in some ways that's the mission of the two-year institution, to be heavily involved in the community and to offer access. And access is important. And access changes from time to time. And relationships with the community, particularly the workforce, change over time as well. Cleveland has a wealth of industry here, and I think there could be many more partnerships made than there are currently. Yesterday, I think Alan, when we were over in his area looking at some technology, I was astounded by. Now being in the humanities, I didn't necessarily understand everything about that technology, but I could see quite clearly that this was something that they had, which I thought was really a niche kind of program that could be very, very beneficial to not just one or two, but to many of the industries here. And so I think that relationship is important. Certainly when you do transfer programming for the universities, in Tennessee did I forget what it's called, in 2010, the 2010 plan, where there were articulations put in place so that everything flowed back and forth. We've done that in Georgia as well, and I think that's important to maintain those relationships with those universities and make sure that students have a seamless pathway from one leg of education to the next leg of education. And those relationships are equally important. But I do want to say one more thing about transfer programs, if you don't mind. I think it's also important for when you're doing general education and transfer to universities to give those students the experiences of the workforce, even though they're transfer students, which is one reason I really like the co-op program here. We did something similar to that in Georgia. We required our interdisciplinary liberal arts degree programs in rural studies to require internships of all of those students. So, they're writing and communication students, they're social and community development, business and economic development, and then politics, and modern cultures, though the 4 majors in that interdisciplinary program. Each one of those students does at least one 3-hour internship as part of that bachelor's degree program. They can do up to 9 hours internship credit in those programs. And so we're placing students in, with a background in writing and communication in internships as editorial assistants with newspapers, with magazines, with publishing companies. And those students are getting real-world experience before they graduate with a liberal arts degree program. And I think that's an issue nationwide that's not being addressed. We talk about the value of a liberal arts education, but no one is really addressing that from a workforce standpoint, which I think is a unique feature that we've developed there. Certainly, we're not the only college who's doing that, but there's not a lot of them who are doing that.
Thank you. Dr. Reddick, you mentioned early on that your accomplishments at Motlow State and what you've done down at Abraham Baldwin. But in general, what would you describe as the 2 or 3 most significant professional accomplishments you've had in your career?
I would say obtaining the degrees, certainly were a major accomplishment for me, particularly when I was already, at Motlow teaching and still working on the doctorate degree. I think that was a major accomplishment. So many people don't finish it, and and my wife's back there, she will tell you I have a terrible, obstinate kind of will about me sometimes, but I forced myself to write 2 pages a day, on that dissertation so that I got it accomplished. But that, it felt good to finish that degree when I was there. I would say the Smyrna facility is by far, in my experience at Motlow, the most important thing that we accomplished. I think there are many accomplishments, but I say that what that did was it set the stage for growth for that institution for many years to come. I was at their grand opening a few weeks ago, and the fascinating thing, as I walked in the building, and it was just beautiful, and I had a student who toured me around, and I thought, this is what it's all about. We built this for these students, and no doubt they'll fill it up, and that area is just still growing and growing and growing, and they'll need another building, before hopefully they're planning another one already. They'll need it shortly. And I think that sustained that college, to see that campus grow from what we started with at Riverdale High School with 199 students in an evening-only program, and to see it now grow to over 1,000 students, is simply amazing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Dr. Reddick, looking kind of fast forwarding to the future, what's your vision of what you would like to be remembered for when you leave this institution, hopefully in a long time?
Yeah, hopefully in a long time. I think I would, people often think about having buildings named for them. I think at Motlow, Dr. Glass had a building named for him. I don't think having something named for yourself is necessarily what you want to be remembered for. You want to be, when you're laid out there in the casket, and people are walking by, you want people to say, he was a good guy. He did everything he could ever do, and he gave back to his community, and he gave back to that institution. And those are the things that I think are the most important things in life. Not the buildings. I think that people, if I were president, I would want people to remember me for the buildings and the things that, I was able to accomplish in a tenure as a president. But I would think it would be more important to say, we're really going to miss him, or something like that.
Dr. Reddick, how do you view the relationship between business financial responsibilities and the academic mission of the college? Now, additionally, I'm sure you're aware that our governor and the Board of Regents and all our institutions are committed to 55 by 25. in terms of increasing the number of Tennesseans with certifications, degrees, higher education. And with your background in academic student affairs, I'm sure you've got some best practices that you could share with us
Sure.
that would help us accomplish that. So I had to throw that in since that's probably each institution in our state's top priority.
Right. Well, first of all, and I could answer that on a number of different ways, but you know, the growth that an institution needs to experience, not only for the tuition revenue, but also to meet the goal of more graduates or more productive citizens or whatever that may be. I think there's different ways to do that. First of all, I think, you know, you do have to partner with business and industry, but at the same time, you have to recruit more students. You know, and there's different ways to recruit students. This is one thing that we changed at Abraham Baldwin. You know, and just to give you an example, historically at Motlow, what we did was we had one recruiter who worked in the admissions office. She's no longer there, but she would go to the various high schools in Motlow's 11 county service area, which were quite a few, particularly in Rutherford County. At that time there were 10, but I think they've added some since I've been gone. And, you know, you do these lunch visits. Well, that doesn't work, you know, and you can build relationships with counselors in the high schools, too. And sometimes that works. But, you know, they're busy dealing with pregnancy, and they're busy dealing with drugs in the school system, and they're busy dealing with problems, you know. So they don't get to spend their time talking to students about going on and getting a higher education somewhere, whether it be a university or a community college. But I think what you have to do is you have to do focused, targeted recruiting. And that's something at Abraham Baldwin that we've done. The enrollment management team reports to me. I certainly didn't start it. We've had some shifts in duties and responsibilities, but what we do is we do what we call targeted recruiting. And so, you know, we have a lot of agricultural programs, and so we target, recruit ag students in the high schools through FFA, but we don't go sit up a lunch table in the dining hall, you know, at the high school. We go to those FFA teachers. We go into those FFA classrooms, or FCCLA, or I forget now what it was called, but the old home ec, which is now called something else. We have a music program. We don't set up lunch visits. We go to the music teachers, and we go to the bands, and we recruit that way. And that's paid dividends for us, but beyond that, we set up a recruiting opportunity where we partner with alumni. And you know, we don't have a service area. We steal students from all counties in Georgia and Florida and South Carolina and Alabama, but we have strategic alumni in key communities where population is such that it would yield a certain number of students, and we've seen a tremendous shift in the demographic of our student from various geographic areas. So, for example, Gwinnett County, which is outside Atlanta on the I-85 corridor, was like the fastest growing county in Georgia and had just huge amount of potential students. We used to get students, a lot of students from Gwinnett, and we lost those after the economy, you know, tanked. And they started going more to those schools in the Atlanta region, and particularly since they developed Gwinnett College. So we had to make up that student population from other counties. And so our foundation office, which has the relationship with the alumni, paired the alumni folks with our admissions folks, and we hosted events in different counties where those alumni, and you know, the alumni are the ones who know the students in their community. So we would pair with them and get them to bring students to the community or to our events. And that's how we changed our recruiting process.
Well, once you recruit them, do you have a good plan to retain them and
We
get
do.
them to graduation?
Sure, and I'll talk a little bit about that too. If I answered the other question, I'll move on to that then. But we, you know, in Georgia, we are concerned about accountability, and we are concerned about retention and graduation as part of our Complete College America and our Complete College Georgia plan. we put in place a number of goals we hope to achieve to help the institution grow and retain its students and graduate them, hopefully, or at least transfer them. We don't have a lot of good data to track how a student transfers to another institution. We want to do a reverse transfer and get them to transfer back the credits so that we can graduate them and they have at least that degree if they never finish their four-year degree at the university. But one thing that we did, and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, but one thing that we did that I think was important was we changed our academic standards of progress. And Cleveland has a low academic standard of progress, just like we did at Abraham Baldwin, just like Motlow, just like most two-year institutions have. You know, you can hang around for a year and suck all of the financial aid resources that you can and do nothing, you know, and we wouldn't kick them out, you know, we would just let them have a good time. You know, that's what a lot of freshman years are about anyway. But what we did was we said, you know, if you set the bar low, you can expect low. But if you set the bar higher, you will get a better achiever. And so what we did was we changed our standard. Here, it's for up to your first year, I think 26 credit hours, it's 1.4 GPA before you are placed on probation or in trouble. Well, that's a 64 average. That's low. We changed ours to a 2.0. Now, 2.0 is not great, but at least it's above that, you know, above a 1. And we knew going into that, we had the data, you know, from our EDS team that showed how many people were on probation, how many students were on probation, how many would theoretically be on probation once we changed it to a 2.0, and we knew that was going to increase substantially. But we said, you know, we're going to set the bar a little bit higher. We're going to require them to have a 2.0. If they do not achieve a 2.0 their first semester, they will be automatically enrolled in a probation seminar, a 1-hour, no credit, pass fail kind of seminar. It was an intervention strategy, really, and what we did was we assigned them an academic support counselor, where they created an academic plan, where we got them all of the resources that they could, you know, now some of them aren't going to do it, and you can't know who's motivated and who's not motivated, really, on the front end of that whole process. But what we did was we put that intervention in place, and so we had, when we changed it, about 200 students last fall who went on probation, and so we had 2 huge seminars. We didn't have a lot of faculty to go around and do this, but and it was kind of a team effort. I went in and talked to them some. We had the financial aid, you know, because this is impacting their ability to get financial aid as well. So after we did that, we knew that after the first year, a student goes on probation, that they're likely to return, about 25% of them will return to the second year. Through our change in the academic standards and through our intervention class that we developed, we retained 50%, so it doubled. And that was a tremendous amount of, you know, retention for us. 50% second year retention rate for those students who were academically in trouble and on probation. We wrote a paper, it'll come out, I hope, this spring, in a publication called About Campus, which is a national kind of student affairs publication. We're still working on edits, but I think it's a good program.
Thank you.
Dr. Reddick, let me ask a question, if I may. One of the things that's unique about Cleveland State is 30 minutes down the road, you've got another community college sitting in Chattanooga. And I think being able to identify what is distinctive about Cleveland State is one of the real opportunities and challenges for the person who's come in this role. Can you share with us your thoughts, where you've got, you know, this other institution down in Chattanooga, but you've got an opportunity here in Cleveland? What do you think will make Cleveland State distinctive, and people say this is why we ought to be at Cleveland State and choose to come here?
Yeah, the programming is similar at most of the two-year institutions, at least in my kind of off-site view of those. You know, Cleveland is very much like Motlow in its two-year programs, and I'm sure it's like Cleveland State, Chattanooga State as well. You know, Dr. Catanzara, I think that's how he pronounces it, he's been around a long time, and he certainly has carved a niche in Chattanooga for, I think, that institution, and been very successful in doing that. I think, but a lot of what his accomplishments have been is because of the relationships he's built with communities and the workforce development programs that he has been able to achieve over time. And I think that's the same case here. I think the relationships are there. You know, when we came on campus Monday, is that when we got here? I don't even know what today is, actually, but when we arrived Monday afternoon, you know, the first thing we did was we drove through downtown, and then we came out here to the campus. And I stopped a student, he had no idea who I was, and I talked to him about his experience, and it was a very positive experience. We went to dinner, and a young lady named Beth served us, and she was a delightful young lady. But what was interesting about her experiences is she works at Whirlpool. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And is in customer service at Whirlpool. And single parent, working at Whirlpool during the day in customer service, waiting tables at O'Charlie's in the evening, and trying to make it, and trying to get an education. And I said, well, you know, how is it going for you at Cleveland State? And she said, great. They came on site to Whirlpool and taught classes. Otherwise, I could not have gone. And I think that is important also, because, you know, you can be an access institution, but if you don't have access, you're not going to accomplishment. So I think you have to literally sometimes go to those businesses and industries to create those relationships and make sure that the citizens and the employees get the education that they want. Many of those companies will have a tuition reimbursement plan. We did that at Motlow with State Farm. We went to State Farm, the regional offices there in Murfreesboro, and we taught classes. I did it myself. Some of the best classes I ever taught were those classes. They were non-traditional students who were motivated, and they were very successful. And I think that's part of the whole access, but I think that's what makes an institution unique, is bridging those relationships and offering the access that is essential to a two-year college.
Thank you for your responses so far, and now we'll turn to you and ask you if you've got questions that you would like to ask members of the committee, the chancellor, or just in general that we can answer for you.
Well, I would ask some questions. One question that I have is what does the Tennessee Board of Regents, the regents and the staff, see as the future of the two-year system in Tennessee? I've read, you know, the technical schools now have been deemed technical colleges, and, you know, and Georgia did that as well. And so I think that's an interesting kind of path forward. What the Georgia system has done, they made theirs technical colleges several years ago, but now those technical colleges there's legislation proposed by the lieutenant governor to make that system a community college system. And of course, the outgoing chancellor at the Georgia Board of Regents, Errol Davis, before he left, waved the wand and made the two-year colleges state colleges, and now we have very limited baccalaureate degree programs. And I guess my question would be, what is the future for Tennessee with respect to higher education?
Yeah, we'll have a chance to talk further later in the day, but we can expand on this as we have that conversation. But I'll take a shot at that, and Warren may have be able to add to that perspective. But going back just a bit, the Complete College Act 2010, one of the central elements of the Complete College Act, or one of the I guess, as that act was being developed, one of the central tenets of the work was we have an underutilized community college system in Tennessee. If you look at penetration rates, and there are different ways of looking at that, but you know, if you just look at gross population, and these numbers may not be the right numbers now, but 4% is a number that's kind of typical for penetration rate in an area. We're way below that in every community we serve with a community college. So part of the thrust of the Complete College Act was trying to strengthen the community college system, recognizing that we need to grow enrollment in Tennessee. Our problem, the underutilization of the community college system is not due to having too many students enrolled in four-year institutions. It's not having enough students enrolled. So part of the approach on the Complete College Act was to move toward a more comprehensive community college system so that we could gain the synergy and the power of system as it relates to community college, while being very sensitive and insisting that we maintain the community nature of our community colleges, because that's essential to their success. We're really trying to look at a much more comprehensive way of how to grow that system. Fast forward to today, the governor's Drive to 55 initiatives that are being developed, and we'll hear more about those in the next few weeks, I think. In conversations with the governor, he believes, he understands, and has become more convinced than ever that the idea that community colleges really are going to be central to Tennessee's post-secondary aspirations is very much part of his thinking. So I think what we'll see, and hopefully not in a way that diminishes the investment in our four-year schools, but I think we'll see a great deal of emphasis on growing that two-year system. Now, the issue of four-year degrees at the two-year schools, we'll talk more about that when we get a chance.
And let me add one piece, if I may, Chancellor, to your comments. I think you will find that over the past couple of years, and Monica, who is behind you, who is does the media relations and communication work for the board of Regents, was a recognition that we really needed to sit down and look at the branding of community colleges. Having grown up in Tennessee, I recall when they first started, as you do, and it was to make sure there was within 50 miles where people lived an opportunity to get some post-secondary education. Well, that clearly has changed over time. And as the Chancellor said, with the governor's push to Drive to 55, that we needed to spend our time working with the community colleges to help people in this state better understand the role of community colleges today. It's different.
It is.
And a lot of the answers you've provided, a lot of the input from the members around this table as committee members who represent the impact that a community college can have in a region, that's why we're all here. But we had to make sure that there was an understanding that a community college is very different today than when it started back in the 60s. And then we had to communicate that and let people realize that coming out of a community college with a two-year degree or getting prepared to go on if you want to for four-year is a very significant investment of time, energy, and a quality education. So I wanted to add that as well to your question.
And if I might, I could never pass up an opportunity to brag about our community colleges. The community college student myself, graduate, have had the pleasure and honor of serving in community colleges for years and years. Frankly, the future prospects for community colleges has never looked brighter. When you have the two presidents, President George W. Bush in the State of the Union address, and then certainly with what President Obama has done in his tenure, highlighting the effectiveness and the quality and the work and the value of community colleges. If you look at what the national research has said, even to our local Tennessee Higher Education Commission within the last year or two, about the fact that community college graduates in some fields actually outperform and have a better pay scale than than those with a four-year degree. When you look at the Drive to 55 initiative, the governor of Tennessee has gone around the state numerous times now speaking about the fact that whether it's in advanced manufacturing, whether it's in business and industry, while there is certainly a need for people with higher level of academic preparation. The majority of jobs are with less than a 4-year degree. So we're almost in a be careful what you ask for, because we've always been very proud of who we are and what we do. But now all of a sudden people are expecting us to live up to what we always knew we were capable of doing. So the future is bright. The future, and it's so rewarding, frankly, to hear our chancellor and hear our regents who have a firm grasp of what community colleges are, because that's not always been the case throughout the nation. So, so I think whomever assumes the presidency at Cleveland State has a great future, great opportunities for success, not only personally and professionally, but for our students, staff, and employees at our colleges. So,
Thank you.
And I'd like to share that another example of how involved the board is. Recently, Cleveland State was reaccredited, went through that process of reaccreditation, and lots of members of the team called us for interviews about our role in helping the college academically and its relationship with business. And so we're definitely intricately involved and committed to helping the institution, the students, and I'm very proud of the national acclaim this institution has received in its leadership.
Thank you. Excellent question. And if I could ask another.
Yes, you may.
I'd like to ask Quentin a question. You're probably really excited that I'm going to ask you. I promise it'll be one I think you can answer very easily. But one thing that I haven't been able to, I've talked to a few students here and there in my 2 days, and you know, oftentimes I think students can tell you more about an institution than faculty and staff will tell you. But my question really is a two-part question. First, I'd like to know what your experience has been here, and I would like to ask you what other students say they would like to have here, what kind of degrees they would like to have that aren't offered here. I look at the degree listings, you know, the transfer degrees as well as the non-transfer degrees, although I think that may be archaic. Nothing is a non-transfer anymore. Everything transfers somewhere. But what students are asking they'd like to see here as far as academic programming?
As academic programs, like, that's a hard one for me, I guess, really to answer. Because I haven't really. I know I've been, as student senate president, I'm more for, we take care of a lot of activities and stuff, and we're like to help with the clubs and stuff. And there's been getting a lot of students getting into like, one thing that I know is, if students get involved in activities and actually get involved in the school, then they're more apt to succeed. And I think a lot of them need more activities and actually more opportunities to get involved in the school, and they need to be more aware of things. Because I've talked to so many students, they don't even know what Student Senate is, and I'm like, you know, it's a place where students can get more involved. And I think that's one thing that needs to be more pronounced in the schools, is that more with activities and stuff like that. So.
Okay, thank you. Any faculty or staff want to add to that? What you hear from students?
I'm not faculty or staff, but as a member of the business community, I think it was alluded to earlier, you know, healthcare is clearly a huge opportunity for growth. And Chattanooga State certainly has a wealth of programs, a broad scope. But I hear from, I've got two students, two children that are also students, 2 children of my own who are in the high school right now. And a lot of them are wanting to get into occupational health, wanting to get into respiratory therapy, radiology, technology. Those programs are available in Chattanooga, but they're not necessarily, students don't have the ability to get down there for a multitude of reasons. So I would like to see an expansion of that scope, and I know that the state's got limited dollars in terms of what they can do, but those are opportunities to grow jobs, good paying jobs, keep them right here in the community, And I think that would be a huge upside. And I hear that from the high school students who wind up going to Middle Tennessee even, so that they can have access to those type of programs.
Well, what about the nursing? Does the nursing program here supply enough need to the healthcare community from your perspective, being in that area?
No, but it's not their fault.
Right.
You know, it's just because of the growth of healthcare. They do an excellent job. I would say I was in West Tennessee, and we had Dyersburg State over there. I was in Martin. UT has an extension there. I would put Cleveland State's nurses up against any of those institutions. I think they do a great job. They're very well versed in critical thinking skills. They're excellent, productive members of the hospital and the physicians. But you're seeing so many physicians now who have mid-levels who need these additional nurses, and a lot of the nurses are wanting to get into that mid-level arena. So while we've somewhat turned the valve down on the nursing shortage, so many nurses have other opportunities now. You just got to keep filling those voids. And so it's a great program. We're very pleased, and I think we probably hire 60 to 70% of the nurses coming out of that program. But I know there's a huge need in other arenas.
Yeah, one thing we've done is we actually have two nursing programs. We have a bridge program and a traditional program. The bridge is for LPNs and EMTs and whatever, but we actually have 280 seats in our program, which are full constantly on an ongoing. I mean, we're graduating in December, and then of course in May, but we filled those seats right back up. But we have grown that program to 280 seats since I've been there. It certainly wasn't there when I went. And I think the most difficulty for us in doing that was not really any special funding or anything like that we received. It was just simply finding the credentialed faculty to teach the courses that we needed, simply because the NLN and the Georgia Board of Nursing had, they have a ratio 20-1 and clinical 10-1, so that was difficulty finding the master's credentialed nurses to be able to do that, but we've managed to do it. It's just hard to hold on to them because we don't pay as well as the hospitals sometimes do, but there are benefits to teaching too.
I want to make sure Nancy talks about nursing because she's got probably our biggest success story in terms of new academic programs in a good number of years here. And I know Matthew's got something to say, and I want to add some things that I know are on our radar institutionally as far as programs we're looking at. So why don't you tell him about evening nursing?
We were able to start it 2 years ago with one cohort of 51 students, and we're hoping to graduate 47 in December. And it is a hybrid program where most of the lecture content's online, and they come one night a week to campus and one night a week to clinical. So
that's excellent.
It's been great.
I just wanted to respond to what students might be telling us, and most of what they tell me are they just complain about things. But one of their complaints has been something that I've been talking with other faculty about, and that is the relevance of the Gen Ed core. They don't see the linkage between all of the different Gen Ed courses that they have to take, and so there's just a growing, I don't know about it, I wouldn't say a concern, but it's something that we're beginning to talk about as faculty. How can we make these courses that they're required to take for most AS degrees and a lot of other degrees, that how can we make that more relevant to their experience and say, yes, you have to take psychology, but here's how it's going to benefit you. Right. Yeah, art history may not be what you're really interested in, but this is the benefit that it's going to give you. And so that's a frustration that students have been, I think it's probably been going on for decades, but I think it's a frustration that it'd be great for us to see us try to meet that and meet the need that they seem to have there.
Sure. I think that's a national frustration, actually, that has not really been addressed well through the years. And I think there's ways to do that, individually and institutionally. Just as, you wouldn't just teach a lecture class anymore. You have to do millennial students need multiple kinds of experiences going on to keep them actively engaged in the learning process, and certainly that helps also identify those key components of why an English class or a speech class or psychology class might be relevant to their own personal experience and also to their work experience, or their future work experience, I should say.
One of the things with academic programs, a couple of things I'll mention. One of the benefits that we're already seeing from the increased emphasis on community colleges at the board level and a community college system led by Vice Chancellor Nichols is the collaboration between the schools. And one example of that, Rome State, I guess it was the lead institution for a federal grant that's called RX for Tennessee. And it's focused on making more opportunities available for entry into allied health programs at different institutions. So for example, we have a group of students who are enrolled through Cleveland State participating in an occupational therapy program at Rome State without having to become fully Rome State students and go there every day. So those are some things that I think we'll continue to see benefit from. And there are some other branches off of that RX for Tennessee grant too. And it involves how many different institutions? 6 or so?
On that particular one, 7.
Okay, seven institutions there, and we are part of that. So,
Yeah.
And then locally, we are seeing some increased interest and activity in our agriculturally related programs. Nothing to the extent of ABAC, but it's something that's still an interest here and a niche that we think we might can meet. And we're doing some things in terms of increased course offerings in kind of niche agricultural programs and looking at that. Also in communications programs, we know we have a lot of student interest as we go to high schools and talk with students. A lot of them are interested in communications programs, so we're looking at ways to meet that need too. Culinary is something that we're looking at probably starting as a non-credit with partnerships with the local high schools who have culinary programs that are bursting at the seams with high school students. So we're looking at how we can transition into that even on a non-credit side, maybe eventually leading to credit too. So.
Good.
The other success, the real success on the evening nursing is that wouldn't have been possible without a gift to the institution. So that's something that we work hard at too, to be able to, as you know, figure out how you fund those kinds of initiatives and new programs.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
So Dr. Reddick, are there any final comments that you would like to share with the committee?
I would just like to take the opportunity to once again thank all of you. I very much appreciate the opportunity. You have a very beautiful community, particularly this week with the leaves changing. And, you know, certainly an institution that has a great deal to offer, whichever candidate you ultimately select. And I think a long and bright, prosperous future for this college. So thank you very much, all of you.
And on behalf of our
Appreciate it.
committee, let me thank you for your answers and for your questions to us as well.
Thank you.
And sort of walk through for you very quickly what the next steps are, just so you know. I realize that you will have a meeting later today with both the Chancellor and Vice Chancellor. Appreciate the time that you and your wife have spent here in Cleveland and on this campus. The Chancellor will talk to each member of this committee. We have a couple who are not with us today, but they have been through this process, and he will ask us for our comments, suggestions, recommendations, or whatever, and then his expectation is to make a recommendation to the Board of Regents before Thanksgiving. So that is the time frame we're on. And again, thank you so much for being
Thank
with
you.
us today, and
Appreciate it.
and appreciate your interest.
All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I know I'm being whisked out the door.